At Grandma's funeral, everyone thought my silence proved mom was right. But silence can mean guilt, or it can mean you have noticed something the room is missing.
My mother chose Grandma's funeral to make me look insane. She waited until the church was full, until every aunt, cousin, neighbor, and church elder had taken their seat, then stood beside the casket like grief had made her holy. I was 19, sitting alone in the second row, because apparently telling the truth made me dangerous to sit beside. Mom dabbed her eyes once and said I had made the whole thing up. Not misunderstood, not panicked. Made it up. People turned slowly, the way they do when they want to stare, but still pretend they are being polite. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I had learned that if I cried, I was unstable. If I defended myself, I was disrespectful. If I stayed quiet, I was guilty. Then I noticed the church sound man standing near the speakers, holding an envelope with Grandma's handwriting on it. And my mother saw it too. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My mother's eyes moved to the envelope for less than a second. Most people would have missed it. I did not. I had spent years learning the difference between my mother being surprised and my mother calculating. Surprise made her blink, calculation made her still. She turned back to the congregation before anyone could follow her gaze. Grief does strange things to young people, she said, her voice soft enough to sound merciful. And Shiela has always had a difficult imagination. That was how she did it. She never sounded cruel in public. She sounded tired, patient, burdened by a daughter who forced her to explain things no mother should have to explain. I could feel the room accepting it because it was easier than asking why a 19-year-old would accuse her own mother at all. Aunt Denise lowered her eyes. My cousin Marcus shifted away from the aisle as if sitting too close to me might make him part of my story. Even Pastor Reed looked uncomfortable, not because he believed me, but because my mother had turned the funeral into something he could not control without seeming disrespectful. 3 weeks earlier, Grandma Evelyn had called me and asked me to come over after dinner. She had not sounded scared. That was the part no one understood. She had sounded careful, like each word had been placed on a table and measured before she let me hear it. When I got to her house, the kitchen chair was overturned. A blue folder was missing from the counter, and Grandma was standing near the hallway phone with one hand pressed flat against the wall. My mother came out of the back room, smiling too hard, and told me Grandma was having one of her spells. Grandma had looked at me once. Not pleading, warning, I told the family what I saw. My mother told them what they preferred to hear. Now, in the church, she reached for a folded tissue and gave the sound man a gentle smile that did not reach her eyes. "Mr. Calloway," she said, "I believe whatever you are holding can wait until after we lay my mother to rest." He looked down at the envelope. Then he said, "Mrs. Evelyn told me it could not." Mr. Calloway did not raise his voice. That made the room quieter. My mother's smile stayed in place, but the tissue in her hand stopped moving. She looked at him the way she looked at waiters who corrected her order, or clerks who asked for a second form of identification. Calmly, politely, like the offense was not large enough to deserve anger, but large enough to be remembered. "Howard," she said, using his first name as if that made him smaller, "this is a funeral." "Yes, Mom," he said. "That is why I waited." A few people turned toward him then, not fully. Just enough to show they were beginning to understand there was something in the room besides grief and accusation. I kept my eyes on the envelope. Grandma's handwriting was unmistakable. Tall letters, firm pressure, no wasted loops. She used to write grocery lists like legal warnings. Milk, bread. Do not answer Marlene when she calls after 10. That last one had been on a note stuck to her refrigerator 2 months before she died. When I asked about it, Grandma had peeled it off and folded it into her apron pocket. "Some people sound sweeter at night," she had said. "That does not make them kinder." I did not understand it then. Or maybe I did, but not enough. My mother stepped away from the casket and toward Mr. Calloway. The movement was small, but it changed the room. She was no longer speaking to everyone. She was managing one person. "That envelope contains private family material," she said. My mother was confused in her final weeks. We all know that. No one answered, because that was the version they had been given. Grandma was confused. Grandma misplaced things. Grandma said strange things. Grandma imagined betrayals because age made her suspicious. But Grandma's voice had just come through the church speakers, clear as the bell she used to ring from the porch when I was little. If Marlene is speaking before this plays, then she has started lying again. My mother must have known the same contradiction had landed. She turned slightly, letting the congregation see the grief in her face again. Sheila, she said softly, please don't let this continue. There it was. My name placed back in the center, not as a person, as the problem. I felt every stare return to me. Aunt Denise stood from the front row and smoothed her black dress. Howard, I think Marlene is right. Whatever Evelyn gave you, this is not the time, Mr. Calloway opened the envelope without looking at her. Inside was one folded sheet and a smaller sealed envelope. He read the name written across it, Sheila. My mother turned toward me before anyone else did. And for the first time all morning, she looked afraid. I did not stand right away. That mattered. My mother wanted movement. She wanted panic, a stumble, a raised voice, anything she could hold up and call proof. So I stayed seated in the second row with my hands folded over my black dress, looking at the envelope like it had arrived from a place no one in that church could reach. Mr. Calloway held it out, Mrs. Evelyn said this was to be opened only if your mother denied what happened in the house, he said. The church shifted around me, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for the air to change. People who had been certain a minute ago became careful. Certainty was easy when the only evidence was my word against my mother's. It became harder when Grandma had planned for the exact moment my mother would try to erase me. Mom recovered quickly. That was one of her talents. She turned toward the congregation with both hands lifted slightly, palms open, as if she were calming a frightened child. My mother loved theatrics, she said. Anyone who knew Evelyn knew that. And near the end, she became paranoid about ordinary things, bills, phone calls, family conversations. She did not say documents. She avoided that word with too much precision.
She called everything ordinary, but skipped the document. Why avoid the one detail that would make Sheila's story easier to disprove?
I noticed because 3 weeks earlier, when I walked into Grandma's kitchen, the first thing I saw was not the overturned chair. It was the empty rectangle on the counter where her blue folder usually sat. Grandma kept that folder beside the fruit bowl, always clipped shut, always turned face down. Bank letters, insurance papers, house records. Things she said should never be left to memory when memory was the first thing people questioned. That night, it was gone. And my mother had been standing near the back hallway with her purse zipped shut. Sheila, Mom said now, turning the softness back on me, you know this is hurting everyone. I looked at her. She had said the same thing when she placed a typed statement in front of me 2 days after Grandma died. It had been waiting on our kitchen table beside a glass of water I had not asked for. I was grieving and exhausted, but even then, I understood what she wanted. The statement said I had been overwhelmed. It said I had misunderstood a family disagreement. It said my mother had never threatened Grandma, never taken anything from her house, never tried to pressure her. It used my name at the bottom before I ever touched a pen. When I refused, Mom folded the paper once and smiled. You are making yourself very hard to protect, she had said. In the church, she used a gentler version of the same voice. Don't make this uglier, she told me. Not here. That was when I finally stood. The floor felt too polished under my shoes. Every step toward Mr. Calloway sounded louder than it should have. I could feel my relatives watching, the way people watch someone approach the edge of something dangerous. He gave me the smaller envelope. Grandma had written my name across the front. Not Sheila, my granddaughter. Not for later. Just my name, firm and deliberate, as if she knew it would need to survive doubt. My fingers tightened around it. Before I could open it, Mom spoke again. She wanted the house, she said. The words landed cleanly. Aunt Denise looked at me. Marcus looked down. 2 women from Grandma's prayer group exchanged the kind of glance that meant a story had finally become simple enough to repeat. My mother saw it working and continued. She knew Evelyn planned to leave the house to the family, and after their arguments, she became obsessed with the idea that I was taking something from her. That was the lie she had been saving. Not that I was confused. Not that I was dramatic, that I was greedy. For a second, I understood how carefully she had built this. If I defended Grandma, I wanted the house. If I accused Mom, I wanted the house. If I stayed silent, I was ashamed because I wanted the house. Every direction led back to the cage she made. Calloway unfolded the sheet from Grandma's envelope and cleared his throat. These are Mrs. Evelyn's instructions, he said. If Marlene publicly claims Shiela lied, exaggerated, or acted for inheritance, play the full recording without interruption. My mother's face changed by a fraction. Enough. Then the speakers crackled again, and Grandma's voice filled the church. Sheila did not want my house, she said. Marlene did. No one moved after Grandma said my mother's name. That was the strange part. The church was full of people, but the silence felt organized, as if everyone had been instructed not to breathe until someone else decided what the sentence meant. My mother decided first. That is not fair, she said. Not untrue, not impossible, not fake. Fair. I looked at her, and for the first time that morning, I felt something inside me settle. She had chosen the wrong word because fear had reached her before strategy did. Grandma's voice continued through the speakers, steady and thin, but unmistakably hers. I am making this recording on Thursday, April 4th at 8:17 in the evening. Nurse Pamela left at 6:30. I took my evening medication at 7 and I am not confused. A few heads turned toward Pastor Reed. He looked down, not at the floor, but at the program in his hand, like he had just realized the funeral order no longer mattered. Grandma paused in the recording. I could hear the old kitchen clock ticking behind her. I knew that sound. It had hung above her stove for as long as I could remember, losing 2 minutes every week and refusing to die. Marlene has been asking me to sign papers I do not agree with, Grandma said. She says it is for convenience. She says daughters handle these things. But the papers are not for convenience. They are for control. My mother turned sharply toward Mr. Calloway. Turn it off. He did not touch the machine. Aunt Denise stood halfway, then sat back down when no one followed her. That was the first crack. Not in the proof, in the loyalty around my mother. People were still watching her, but now they were not waiting for her to explain me. They were waiting for her to explain herself. Grandma's voice went on. The blue folder has copies of my bank statements, the deed information, and a letter for my attorney. If the folder is missing, Marlene has taken it or had it taken, the blue folder. I felt the words move through the room before anyone spoke them. 3 weeks earlier, I had said that folder was gone. My mother had laughed in my face and told Aunt Denise I was inventing details because details made lies sound better. Now Grandma was naming the same thing before she was dead. My mother's mouth tightened. My mother misplaced things constantly. Everyone knows that. The recording answered her as if Grandma had been sitting in the front row, waiting. If Marlene says I misplaced it, ask her why she came to my house on April 4th with a large brown purse and left with it zipped shut. Someone whispered behind me. I did not turn around. I could not waste attention on people who had finally begun arriving at the place I had been standing alone for weeks. Grandma took a breath in the recording. It trembled once, then steadied. She will say I was paranoid. She will say I was old. She will say Shiela put these ideas in my head because Shiela is young enough to be dismissed and close enough to be blamed. My throat tightened, but I kept my face still. That was what Grandma had known, not just what my mother had done, how she would defend it, who she would sacrifice first. My mother stepped away from the casket completely now. There was no graceful way to do it, and everyone noticed. The grieving daughter had become a woman trying to reach the sound system before another sentence could land. Pastor Reed moved into the aisle. Marlene, he said carefully, let it play. She stopped. The room changed again. Grandma's voice lowered. I did not leave one copy. I learned better than that. I left instructions with Howard Calloway, documents with my attorney, and one recording where Marlene never thought to look. The machine clicked softly, and the audio paused. For half a second my mother had air. She used it. She set this up, Mom said, pointing at me. Sheila did this. She has been angry since I told her she was not entitled to that house. The old version of the room almost returned. I felt it trying to. People wanted one person to blame. They wanted the funeral back. They wanted my mother's confidence to mean she was innocent. Then Mr. Calloway reached into Grandma's envelope again. He pulled out a small black flash drive with a strip of masking tape across it. The handwriting was Grandma's. Kitchen camera, the night Shiela told the truth. Pastor Reed was the one who took the flash drive. Not my mother. Not Mr. Calloway. Not me. That mattered too, because by then everyone understood that whoever touched the evidence would be remembered for touching it. Pastor Reed walked to the small media table beside the choir steps, handed it to the young man who usually handled the memorial slides, and said one sentence. Put it on the screen. My mother laughed once. It was not a real laugh. It was too sharp and too lonely for that. It came out of her like a sound she had not approved before it escaped. You cannot be serious, she said. You are going to play some edited video during my mother's funeral? No one answered her. That was when I knew the room had finally stopped belonging to her. The memorial screen flickered from Grandma's smiling portrait to a grainy view of her kitchen. The angle was strange, high and slightly tilted, aimed from the shelf near the old radio. I recognized the fruit bowl, the lace curtains, the kitchen clock above the stove. And then I saw myself in the corner of the frame, not inside the house yet, but through the back window, stepping onto the porch. The date in the corner read April 4th. The time read 8:32. My mother appeared first. She was standing at Grandma's table with the blue folder open in front of her, not missing, not imagined, open. Grandma sat across from her in her housecoat, one hand resting on the papers, her face pale but focused. I told you no, Grandma said on the video. My mother leaned closer. And I told you this is not about what you want anymore. You are making decisions that affect the whole family. Grandma did not raise her voice. It affects my house, my money, my name. Mom slid a paper across the table. Sign it, and this stops being difficult. Behind me, someone gasped quietly. On the screen, Grandma pushed the paper back. No, that one word did more than any crying could have done. It was clear. It was calm. It was proof that Grandma had known exactly what was in front of her. My mother watched herself on the screen, and all the softness drained from her face. The video continued. She grabbed the blue folder and stood. The kitchen chair tipped backward and hit the floor. Grandma reached for the hallway phone, but Mom moved faster, blocking her path. You call anyone, Mom said, and I will tell them Shiela has been filling your head with nonsense. They will believe me before they believe an old woman who forgets her pills and a girl who wants a house. My body went cold, not because I had not known, because hearing the exact shape of the trap out loud was different from surviving inside it. Then the back door opened on the screen. I came in, 19 years old, still wearing my work shirt, still carrying the small bag of soup Grandma had asked me to bring. The footage showed what happened before my mother rewrote it. Me stopping in the doorway. Me looking at the overturned chair. Grandma standing near the wall with her hand braced against it. Mom turning toward me with that fast, perfect smile. Your grandmother is having one of her spells, she said on the video. In the church, that sentence landed like a door locking from the outside. Aunt Denise covered her mouth. Marcus whispered, "Oh my God." My mother turned toward me then, not the screen. Her eyes were wet now, but the tears had arrived too late to help her. Shiela, she said quietly, you do not understand what you are doing. For weeks, that sentence would have worked. It would have made me feel young, reckless, ungrateful. It would have made me search myself for some mistake she could use. But Grandma's voice had already crossed the room before mine ever needed to. Pastor Reed stopped the video only after the final frame showed Mom leaving through the back door with the blue folder under her arm. No one asked me why I had lied. No one asked why I had made it up. The questions had moved. Mr. Calloway placed the recording envelope on the pulpit. Mrs. Evelyn also instructed me to say her attorney has copies. At the back of the church, an older man in a dark gray suit stood. I knew him vaguely as Mr. Bell, Grandma's lawyer. He had come to her house twice that year, and both times my mother said he was only helping with routine paperwork. He stepped into the aisle. Evelyn gave me bank records, a written statement, and instructions regarding the property. Until the matter is reviewed, the house cannot be sold or transferred. My mother's head snapped toward him. That was the first time she looked truly trapped. Not embarrassed, not cornered socially, trapped. Because the lie had not only failed in public, it had failed on paper. A church elder asked Mr. Calloway to preserve the audio equipment. Pastor Reed asked two people to remain with the media table. Mr. Bell said he would contact the proper authorities regarding the financial records. No one shouted. No one dragged my mother out. That almost made it worse for her. The consequences arrived calmly, the same way her lies had. Aunt Denise sat down without looking at Mom. Marcus moved from the front row and stood near the side aisle, not beside me, but no longer away from me either. It was not forgiveness. It was recognition. Late, uncomfortable, and not nearly enough. Mom tried one final thing. She walked toward me slowly, palms open, using the face that had fooled rooms bigger than this one. We can talk about this at home, she whispered. As mother and daughter, I looked at the casket first, then at the screen, frozen on Grandma's kitchen, then at my mother. We already talked about it, he said, 3 weeks ago, when you called me a liar for telling the truth. Her hand lowered. The room heard me. More importantly, she knew the room heard me. Grandma's funeral did not end the way funerals are supposed to end. There was no clean prayer that made everyone comfortable again. There was no easy return to flowers, hymns, and polite grief. There was only the truth, sitting in the church with all of us. Mr. Bell later told me Grandma had named me temporary guardian of the house records. Not owner, not winner, guardian. That was the word she chose because Grandma understood something my mother never did. The house was not the prize, the truth was. I walked out of the church alone, but it was not the same kind of alone as when I walked in. When I entered, I was the girl everyone had been taught to doubt. When I left, I was the person Grandma had trusted to outlast the lie. Behind me, my mother stayed near the front pew, surrounded by people who finally had nothing to say for her. And for the first time since Grandma's house, silence belonged to me.
When someone needs the whole room to doubt one person, it usually means it's not the first lie they have practiced. How many other truths were buried before the same way?